Slenderman is a modern urban legend that has been creeping us all out since 2009. While he is fictional, he has inspired some real-life horror stories that have ruined the lives of young teens and their families.
What started out as an internet Photoshop competition soon took on a life of its own. Slenderman is an enigma. From a video game to reported sightings to obsession and even murder. Throw the word Slenderman around at a party and you're gonna get a variety of reactions. Hey guys, it's Raechel Fisher and I'm stoked to be back in office to present to you our list of top 10 real scary stories about Slenderman. Get ready guys, it gets real dark real fast. Alright, number 10, where it all began. We have to at least begin at the beginning. Slenderman first started back in 2009 when it made its first appearance on a website called Something Awful on June 10th of that year. It was posted by Eric Knudsen, 28 at the time, who went by the internet name of Victor Surge. It was supposed to be yet another entry into a paranormal image Photoshop contest, but no one expected what happened next. According to Eric, Slenderman was exactly that, a tall, thin, white-faced man with no facial features in a black suit. It had long arms that Knudsen said it would use to stalk young people and torment them with mind games. Soon, images and stories of Slenderman swept the internet, even earning deadly and dedicated followers, which we will discuss in detail later. As a result, many believe that Slenderman has actually been thought into existence through collective consciousness, that it has become a tulpa. A tulpa is an entity that is created in the mind and acts independently and parallel to your own consciousness. They are sentient beings who live in your head, but also live in the real world at the same time. So, while the initial beginning of Slenderman is fictional, there is just no guarantee that it remains that way. After all, as Dumbledore said, to make an entirely unrelated pop culture reference, just because it's happening in your head, why on earth should that mean that it is not real? Number 9, the Shadow Man. This first victim reports having been tormented by Slenderman his entire life and referred to him first as the Shadow Man. Many people who experience night terrors report seeing a tall, lanky shadow figure that torments them while in sleep paralysis. This guy first saw him when he was just 8 years old. While getting up to go to the washroom, they saw a tall, shadowy figure standing in the hallway. He reached out and beckoned to him with long, slender fingers. At some point he worked up the courage to turn on the light and the figure disappeared. 4 years later it appeared again on his uncle's farm, standing in the highest window at the top of the building of the old barn, staring right at him. Then 2 years later after that, he appeared again, this time a lot closer. By this point, this person had developed sleep paralysis and it would happen fairly often. As they were about to drift off to sleep, there he stood at the end of his bed. They couldn't move or scream, and the figure just stood there watching him, waiting for something, until finally he burst up from the bed and Slenderman disappeared. But the sense that someone was watching him still remained and never went away. Number 8, Trampoline. I mentioned previously that Slenderman became a kind of internet meme contest, but just how Slenderman became such a prolific urban legend remains unknown. Perhaps it's because of innocent sightings like this that make a more sinister explanation arise. Check out this clip.
After a record, when he played the video, he saw something like a Slenderman seeing him from his bed.
I think what freaks me out about this video the most is how horror film-esque it is and how mundane. It was just a kid wanting to record his badass trampoline skills, but what he wouldn't have noticed while he was filming was the presence of something watching him. Considering the fanaticism around Slenderman, it is possible that predators could assume its identity to carry out evil deeds. I don't know, but I hope he's safe and that who or whatever that was never seen again. Number 7, 7-Eleven. Apparently Slenderman loves a good Slurpee. This next story comes from a young woman from Oklahoma City. She was 15 years old at the time when her and her friend made a typical visit to 7-Eleven. Next to the convenience store there was a park with all of these weird statues. It was around 12:30 a.m. and usually it's an uneventful walk, but this time they saw an extremely tall figure, as tall as the branches in the trees nearby. It was dressed in black and extremely pale, sounds like Slenderman. Attempting to show no fear in the face of potential danger, she shouted at the person to see if she'd get a response, but to no avail. It just stood there, staring at them. I hate that. Needless to say, they booked it and referred to the being as Voldemort because that's kind of what it looked like. But then, years later, her friend informed her of the tales of Slenderman, and after seeing a picture she realized that's exactly what it looked like. Imagine No thank you. Number 6. A cemetery sighting. This next story predates the whole Slenderman launch as well. This Reddit user reports a story that happened in her hometown before Slenderman was even launched. Reports of kids seeing a tall man in a suit walking around was already the stuff of legend where she lived. Her friend's older sister was skateboarding home one night and she had to pass the cemetery. Of course, there's a cemetery. Of course there is. As she went by, she kept seeing tall shadows following her, and she initially just wrote it off as a weird reflection of the light, you know, as you would. But then when she got home, she saw a creepy looking old man wearing a black suit standing in her backyard. She ran inside and looked out the window, but he had moved. He was already across the street under the trees, again, still looking at her. Stories like this were pretty common in her neighborhood, but it wasn't until the Slenderman story actually launched in 2009 that people actually got really scared. If stories like this actually exist and remain to be true, then here is my question. Since the way he tortures his victims is through mental manipulation, who is to say that the image of Slenderman circulating is a result of the creature's own grand plan? Number 5. Alone in the forest. This next story comes from Zach, who lives in Texas. This one creeps me out because it reminds me of the stories kids at school used to tell about the forest behind my school. While Zach was growing up, there was a big patch of forest behind his house. He used to play there all the time, but one evening made him question ever going back. Something was off about that evening, and so he began looking around. Off in the distance he saw a figure just standing there. It was impossibly tall, dark, with a featureless face, but somehow he knew he was staring right at him. Like a smart lad, everything inside him told him to run, and so he did. Follow your instincts, kids, okay? He was about a 7-minute run to his backyard, so he started sprinting, but no matter how fast he ran or where he went, the creature was always the same distance behind him. When he finally made it to the other side, he turned around and saw the creature stopped. He never saw the creature again, but years later, he started hearing about Slenderman and knew that's what he had seen. Number 4. Aaron Campbell. Aaron Campbell was a twisted young man obsessed with a wide variety of violent video games and just gore in general. He started out as they all do, by taking the lives of animals in vicious ways for pleasure. So when Aaron took the life of Alicia MacPhail on the island of Bute in Scotland, though shocked and horrified, no one could say they were surprised that Aaron was the perpetrator. Campbell was obsessed with anything that had to do with violence and was especially fascinated by Slenderman. This was just one of his fixations, and reportedly practiced voodoo while attempting to be YouTube famous. But his obsession with Slenderman finally became a reality. Alicia's death was gruesome to say the least, inhumane beyond belief. Thankfully, Aaron now sits behind bars for a minimum of 27 years, but honestly, hopefully forever. Number 3. House on fire. This next one was one of 3 crimes inspired by Slenderman and goes to show how dangerous obsession can be. In 2014, Lily Marie Hartwell walked to a park in the middle of the night. She carried with her a backpack full of knives, lighters, flashlights, cookies, and some water. Lily had just carried out an act brought on by an obsession with the tale of Slenderman. Unbeknownst to her mother and brother who were sleeping at home, she had just set her house on fire. Thankfully, the two escaped the fire with no mortal injuries, but their entire home fell to ash. According to police accounts, Lily confessed to having been obsessed with the creepypasta story of Slenderman. She tracked down story after story about the creature and kept journal entries mentioning murder and death. One particular entry is chilling to read, especially after such a horrific event. It reads, and I quote, "This keeps up, there will be no safety in this house," unquote. Lily was charged with arson and 2 attempted homicides. Weirdly though, Lily sent a text to her mom after the fact that read, "I'm so sorry mom, I don't know why I did it. Did any of you get hurt?" Like she was actually concerned. So it kind of goes to show that she was in a weird space and maybe she snapped out of it. Could it have been Slenderman? We don't know. Number 2. White mask. One of the key tropes of Slenderman that I mentioned previously is his ability to mentally torture its victims. So could that be the reason as to this next story? In 2014 in Cincinnati, Ohio, a mother who chose to remain nameless along with her daughter was returning home from work. Her daughter was waiting for her silently in the kitchen, wearing all black clothing and a white mask. Already we know who she's trying to imitate, and given the daughter's reported obsession with Slenderman, you get the idea. But next, the unimaginable happened. The daughter attempted to stab her own mother in the chest. The mother was able to thwart the attack, earning only minor defensive wounds. Apparently, her daughter had a history with mental illness and Slenderman had become an obsession of hers. She had drawings, diary entries, and references to killing, and even made a whole world dedicated to the creature on Minecraft. The girl's fascination inspired her attack on her mother, but there was something very off with her daughter, stating to police, and I quote, "She was someone else during the attack." Number 1, last but not least, fatal followers. We have the infamous Slenderman trial. Morgan Geyser and her friend Anissa Vire were fanatic believers in a legend of Slenderman, and the consequences were almost deadly. In May of 2014 in Wisconsin, the girls made an attempt to show their dedication to this false idol by offering up a sacrifice. Their victim of choice was Peyton Leutner, one of their classmates. The two girls lured Peyton to a slumber party at their house and decided to play a game of hide and seek in the forest. During the game, the two girls got knives, pinned her down, and left 19 wounds and hit 2 major arteries. They fled the scene of the crime, and Peyton, being the utter badass that she is, dragged herself to a nearby road where she was saved by a nearby biker. Peyton lived to tell the tale, thankfully, and both Anissa and Morgan have been diagnosed with childhood onset schizophrenia. Morgan was charged with first-degree intentional homicide, which moved it to an adult court. Geyser was ordered to spend 40 years in a mental health institution, and Anissa was committed to a mental health facility for 25 years. And that was our top 10 real scary stories about Slenderman. This list got so crazy so fast. From what sounds like urban legends to actual tales of murder, how could one picture on the internet become such a deadly phenomenon? Has Slenderman really been here all along, and thanks to Eric, we finally have a name for that feeling of being watched or that shadow over your shoulder? Who knows, but let us know if you liked today's video by doing that cool button thing, you know, like where you press it and then we get excited about it. Comment and let us know your crazy stories about Slenderman, and again, subscribe for more. I've been your host, Raechel Fisher, and until next time, take care and stay aware.